Hello, Year Fives. I hope everyone is doing good. What we did last week was we added a fruit to our game and we added a timer to our game. And the fruit obviously came with a score as well. Now, one thing we had with our fruit was we got the fruit to disappear whenever our Pacman ate him. He added one to the score as well. And the fruit also went to a random position. Now, I did give you guys the task to try and figure out how we can get the fruit to not go into the wall when he goes to a random position. Now, when it comes to the program, we need to think about when we're coding it, we need to think about exactly what we want each thing to do because everything that we say line by line is exactly what our sprites and backdrop will do. So, whenever if I go through my code for my cherries at the moment, whenever my green flag is clicked, it will show. The score will set to 0, and it will go to that start place on the board. And then forever, it will wait until it touches the sprite, which is my Pacman. And when he does touch the Pacman, the score will change by 1. The fruit will hide. It will go to a random position and then show again. So the only problem was that when he went to that random position, sometimes he was stuck. It was stuck in the wall. And we need to think about exactly what message do we want to give line by line to that cherry to stop him or stop it from going into the wall. Okay, so let's think about it. He's touched the sprite. The score's changed by 1. It's hidden. It's gone into a random position and then it's shown. The only problem is that it's shown when it's touching the ball, or the problem could be the fact that it's gone to a random position. So what we're going to do is we're going to think, okay, if you go to a random position, which you have, and if you end up touching the wall, the orange wall, then what do we want to do? We want you to go somewhere else. Now let's think about how we are going to code that. So let's start off again. Let's start that again. So we're going to want you to go to a random position. However, if that random position is touching my wall, so let's add an if, and that if will go after my random position. Let me move that show out of there just for now. So we said, if you're touching my wall, obviously we can't say touching my wall exactly. However, we will use the color. So only if you are touching the color orange, that's when I want you to do the next few bits. I want you to go to another random position. And then you can show. Let's test that out now. So my Pacman is moving around. He went to a random position. Oh, now what happened there? And what could have happened is he did go to a random position. However, that new random position could have been in that touching the orange wall again. Are we going to constantly say if you go to a random position? No. If you're touching my orange wall, then go to a random position. We cannot keep on saying that. How many times are we going to code it? Are we going to code it 1,000 times? Imagine if we did, and on the 1,001st time, or each time it constantly touched the wall. That's a possibility. However, that's when we bring our iteration into it. We are going to say, repeat this. Okay, instead of saying to do it 1,000 times, we're going to say to repeat this. So let's head over to control. Now remember, are we going to tell it to do something forever? No. We want it to do it a certain number of times. But do we know how many times we want it to do it? No. So we're not going to use the repeat 10, which we could change the number if needed to 1,000. We're going to say repeat until. So I want you to keep on doing something until something happens. And I want you to keep on going to a random position. So let's quickly talk about that code again. So wait until you're touching my sprite 1. Change the score by 1 when you do touch it. And when you do touch it, I want you to hide. I want you to go to a random position. However, if you're touching my orange wall, Then I want you to repeat this. I want you to repeatedly go to a random position until, but until what? Is it until you're touching the blue wall? No, it's until you're not touching my orange wall. So I'm going to head over to the operators and I'm going to use this block here, not, and I'm going to head back to my sensing, touching my orange wall. Let's use the color picker and let's grab that in. So again, I want you to wait until you touch my sprite 1. When you do touch my sprite 1, then you're going to change the score by 1. So you're going to increase the score. You're going to then hide. You're going to move to a random place in the game. However, if you're touching my orange wall, I want you to repeatedly go to a random position until you're not touching my orange wall, and then you can show. So let's test that out now. Okay, remember, whenever we add some code, we always want to test it out and see if it works. So that if it doesn't work, we can try to fix it. Now, what would happen is usually when we find out that there's an issue with our code, we would look for exactly where that code is in order to try and fix it. And that term is called debugging. Okay, so the word obviously comes from, debugging is sort of undoing a bug. And the word bug is actually usually when you have an error in your code. And that word actually started off with an actual live, well, not a live bug, but a bug being found in a computer which caused issues with the code. So imagine they had all sorts of issues with their code. They decided to try to fix it. They thought, let's look inside just in case there's something wrong. And they found an actual bug there. Okay, so that code seems to be working. What I want you to do, go ahead and code it and test it out. Remember, we always want to test out our code, and then you can continue with the video. Okay, so I'm playing my game really nicely. I'm really good at this game. My time's obviously gone to 0. However, obviously my time, once gone to 0, should actually end my game. We'll worry about that later on. So the next thing I want to do is obviously we want to add some sort of competition to the game. What can we add to add some sort of competition? We can add a high score. Now, we did add a high score to one of our projects last year, if you guys remember that. We are going to try to add the high score again. Remember, it's only a couple of lines of code. It's not too difficult. So the first thing I want is obviously to create a variable. And that variable would have the name. What would be a good name for my high score? High score, highest score, best score. It's up to you. Now, I don't want anyone to ask me what they should name it. You should be able to give it a relevant name yourself. I've given you a few options, and some people who do ask me about their game, my response is usually it's your game, it's up to you. I mean, sort of template we want similar, but obviously you guys can be a bit creative as well. So I decided to move that into the wall in order to make it not sort of interfere with the gameplay. So I've got my high score variable. Now let's code. Now we're going to think that when will I actually do anything with the high score? So right now I'm playing, my score is 17. At what point do I need to check my high score? At the end of the game. Okay, so I need to find out exactly where I've used my timer, where I've coded my timer, which was on my sprite over here. And what I'm going to do is, let me zoom into that a little bit. When my green flag is clicked, the time is set to 10. Obviously, I can change that to a minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour. That's up to you. We can do that later on. And I will repeatedly wait a second and change the time by -1 until the time gets to 0. When the time gets to 0, what do I want to happen? Well, the first thing I need to do is end my game. How can I end my game? I can actually get my sprite to hide. So I'm going to head over to looks and I will add a hide block there as well. So as soon as my time goes to 0, my sprite is hidden. I can do a similar bit of code. Obviously, I don't want to get everything there. I could just use a wait until time equals 0, and then get my cherry to hide as well. So let's think about the high score. So the time has gone to 0. What am I going to do with the high score? We're going to check the high score. Think about it exactly how it would work. Give it a go and try to code it for yourself. Otherwise, you can come back, continue, and see how we will code it. Okay, so the high score we're going to think. We're going to take, at what point do I want my high score to change? When somebody gets higher than my current high score. So we're going to check, is the current score higher than the high score? And if it is, then I need to set my high score, or I need to change my high score to the current score. So let's think about what I'm going to use there. So let's start again. We said, if someone beats the high score, so if my score is greater than high score, again, we're going to head over to control. We'll use the if there as well. And we're going to say if, let's head over to the operators, if my score is greater than my high score. So we do have these symbols here, which you may have used in maths. One of them is greater than, one of them is less than. You should be able to remember exactly which one is which. Now, it doesn't matter which one we use. However, we do need to make sure we put the correct variable on the right side. So like I said, if my score is greater than my high score. So if my score is greater than my high score. Is that correct? No. So let's swap them around. If my score is greater than my high score. If my score is greater than my high score, what do I want to do? I want to change my high score to score. How am I going to do that? Let's see if you guys can figure that out. Give that a go. If not, then carry on with the video and we'll see. It's very simple. It's just another line. We are going to set high score to score. So remember where we had the variables last week. So if I have my cup again, this is my current score. And in this cup, I have my high score. This is not my cup, it's actually my fist. I have my high score. So whichever number is in here, which is my variable, let's take a look. It's 10. My score is currently 11. So is my score higher than my high score? Yes, it is. I'm going to set this to whatever is in here. So now in here will be the number 11. So that's exactly how I will add a high score. Okay, let's let you guys go ahead and code that. And then you guys can come back and watch the next part of the video. Now, the next thing we will do is we are going to add a game over screen. Okay, so the way we are going to do that is we're going to head over to backdrops and we will create a new backdrop. So let's head over to backdrop here. Now, there are loads of ways we can add our game over screen. We can either create a new backdrop, we can add a new sprite and have the sprite show up only if, once the game is finished. It's up to us what we want to do. So I'm going to create another backdrop. Let's duplicate this one. And let's edit. How should we edit it? So if you guys can have your own ideas, you guys can think about how you may want to edit it. I'm going to add some text. Let's add. Okay, so we can change the fill. Should we use white? Okay, let's leave that like. So do you know what? I'm going to undo that. I didn't quite like that. Let's just keep the time up. Let's make that bigger. No, I can't put it in that wall because that's where all my other writing is. Let's make that a little bit bigger. And let's change the color of that to white. And let's change the font. Uh, let's add another text box. Let's try and get that in the middle. Okay, so that's one of my backdrops, and obviously I will now add one for just in case they did beat the high score. So I'm going to duplicate that again. No, I'm not going to duplicate that one. I'm actually going to duplicate backdrop one. And let's add okay. So now I need to think. I've got three backdrops. I need to think about exactly when I will use each one. In fact, I will actually rename backdrop 3 to high score. And I will also rename backdrop 2 to game over. Okay, so now let's head over back to my code. Okay, and I need to think about exactly where I will code this, or when will I code this. So I will firstly need to think that as soon as my green flag is clicked, I will need to switch to my backdrop 1. So if I head over to looks and I will use this code here, switch backdrop 2. As soon as my green flag is clicked, I want to switch to backdrop 1. And once my game is finished, I need to think, when would I use the 2? So we've already got here that if my score is greater than high score, I would then change my high score to score. I will also change my backdrop to high score. However, if that's not the case, then I want it to go to the game over screen. So I'm actually going to change this if statement, and I'm going to actually use an if then else statement. Now what the if then else statement does is, if a certain condition is met, it will do one thing. However, if it is not met, it will do something else. At the moment, our if statement is only doing something if the condition is met. So that's like me saying, if you're good in class, I will give you a dojo. Okay, so if you're good, I will give you a dojo. However, I may say, if you're good in class, I will give you a dojo, else I will give you an off break. So then it's always one or the other. So I'm going to use my if then else. I've already got my code and it well, we haven't tested if it works, but I can put that there. Just simply drag that over. If my score is greater than my high score, we're going to set the high score to score, and we are going to switch the backdrop to our high score backdrop. Otherwise, we will switch our backdrop to the game over backdrop. Now, let's test this out. Okay, so I've got a 10-second game. My high score is zeros. I've already beaten it. There we go. High score. Okay, it's as straightforward as that. So what I want you guys to do is go ahead. We should have created our two backdrops, and we should have also added our code to our code as well. And once you're done, you can come back and do the last bit. Okay, so the last thing we're going to do is we're going to start adding ghosts, or what we can call enemies. Now, there's a few ways we could do this. We are going to create our ghosts today, but we will code them later on. Okay, so I'm going to head back to choose a sprite, and I'm going to paint another sprite. And now you can, if you want to actually head over to the choose sprite, so you can use something there. You can create a new sprite. It could be a bar of chocolate, something unhealthy, a slice of pizza possibly, an unhealthy pizza, not the healthy ones. Or I can draw a sprite itself. Now I'm going to draw. Oh, it's already did this in black, so that's fine. Let's keep it as black. And let's do a bit of painting as well. So I'm trying to fill that little gap. Let's just paint that. So I have a little Mars bar, and I'm going to change the size of that. Let's try 25. That looks like a good size. Now my Mars bar will be chasing my Pac-Man around. So get a ghost for me as well, whether it's a chocolate bar, pizza, piece of broccoli, something that you do not like, and then we will code that later on. Feel free to try and code that over the week as an extension task. Otherwise, we will be coding that next week.